What is up, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of The Danny Show. I'm your host, Daniel Cody, and this is where I give commentary and reviews on all things wrestling. As you can see by the attire today is a very special day because today we celebrate the Olympic gold medalist, the wrestling machine himself, Kurt Angle. Oh, it's true. It's darn true. Now, this would be part two of my top 10 favorite Kurt Angle matches from WWE, as part one was up from a couple of years ago. Be sure to check that out also. But for now, let's get into part two of my favorite Kurt Angle matches. We start off at number 10 with Kurt Angle versus Rey Mysterio at SummerSlam 2002. This was built up because Rey Mysterio, in a tag match involving Edge and John Cena on the same team, Rey Mysterio pinned Kurt Angle with the 619. And of course, that would lead to Kurt Angle feeling like he got pinned by a 12-year-old and would challenge Rey at SummerSlam and made Rey Mysterio tap out in an opening but great match at SummerSlam 2002. One of my favorite SummerSlams of the year. Next on this list at number 9, we have Kurt Angle versus John Cena at No Way Out 2005. Even though this match on Kurt Angle's end was a losing effort, it was still a classic. Let me tell you, John Cena and Kurt Angle had some amazing matches. One of the John Cena versus Kurt Angle matches is on part one of this review, but I can't tell you here what match it was. But on this part two, that was part one. But on part two, I put No Way Out 2005. Even though it was a losing effort, it was an amazing match. And it took Cena developing his never give up trait to overcome being in the ankle lock, to go for the AA, then name something else to win the match and become the number one contender for JBL's championship at WrestleMania 21. Next on this list at number 8 was Kurt Angle versus Triple H at the Royal Rumble 2001. Now, this match was pretty good. This was one of the only times, if my memory serves me correctly, this is one of the only times where Kurt Angle successfully landed the moonsault on to an opponent. He did that at the Royal Rumble of '01. Also, fun fact, both men were heels at the time, but it didn't stop the match from being a great competitive match. Although the spotlight was barely on them, the spotlight was on a whole bunch of other things, including Trish Stratus versus Stephanie and Mr. McMahon's extramarital affair with Trish Stratus. Ironically, Mr. McMahon's extramarital affairs played a role in him stepping down last year, if you can believe that. So, despite all of that, and Jerry Lawler's weird 50 Shades fetish to see Trish Stratus get spanking from Vince and all that other dumb stuff, um, despite all of that, it was a great match, although it would end with Stone Cold Steve Austin stunning Triple H, which would let Kurt Angle win the match, retaining his WWE Championship at the time. Yes, Kurt Angle was the WWE Champion, and that win with Stone Cold costing would help Stone Cold and Triple H's rivalry. Next on this list, we have, speaking of Stone Cold Steve Austin, he is next on this list at number 7 in a match at SummerSlam 2001, where Stone Cold was defending the WWE Championship. This match was a great match. Unfortunately, it was a great match that ended controversially because Stone Cold kept attacking the referees. Kurt Angle fought with a bloody face, and he managed to overcome many stunners and almost made Stone Cold tap out. Nonetheless, the referee had been beat up so much that he had to call a DQ. Unfortunately, the DQ would favor Stone Cold Steve Austin with the championship advantage. And Nick Patrick, who is no stranger to controversy, would end up tapping out like a drunk man, in the words of Jim Ross, as Angle would attack him for his crooked decision and put him in the ankle lock. Next on this list at number 6, we have Kurt Angle versus Booker T on an episode of SmackDown in July 26th of 2001. This is where Kurt Angle would win his WCW championship from Booker T, and he would do this in spite of interferences from up-and-coming rival at the time, Stone Cold Steve Austin. He would not only overcome a stunner and come back, Kurt Angle would make Booker T tap out to win the WCW Heavyweight Championship. Even though it didn't last long, this was during the era of WWE versus the ECW and WCW alliance. Speaking of allies, we have at number 5 Kurt Angle with the Shield members Dean Ambrose and Jon Moxley versus The Bar, that's 2 guys, Braun Strowman, Kane, and The Miz, who is now a babyface fighting against Gunther. Now, Roman Reigns was out with some kind of physical issue, which left Kurt Angle to be the special honorary Shield member, and he did not disappoint. This was a great match. Even though they were 2 men short of an even match, it was a great match for the Shield with Kurt Angle as the honorary man. And there were a lot of great highlights of the match, and it helped the Shield that Braun Strowman and Kane fought amongst each other. And everyone threw Braun Strowman in a dumpster truck for whatever reason. So going forth, it would help somewhat make things near even with Braun Strowman and Kane going up against each other at TLC 2007. And they would end up fighting, and Kurt Angle would do an amazing pose during the substitute for Roman Reigns' absence, as he would lead the Shield Bomb and win the match for the team. At number 4, this was a classic. At number 4, we have Kurt Angle versus The Undertaker on an episode of SmackDown in September the 4th, 2003. I had the distinct pleasure of witnessing this match. This was a match that took place during my childhood, and I was very blessed to see it. It was between The Undertaker and Kurt Angle for the WWE Championship on an episode of SmackDown that took place from New Orleans. New Orleans hasn't been very kind to The Undertaker, except for 2018. But in any event, this match was a classic. Both men were fan favorites at the time, believe it or not. But this match was a classic between The Undertaker and Kurt Angle. Undertaker actually named Kurt Angle recently one of his favorite small wrestlers, being wrestlers 6 feet and under. No pun intended to the name of his channel. However, he was named one of the favorites, Kurt Angle was, to The Undertaker on Undertaker's podcast. And this match proved why. We saw these guys pull out their best finishers and great submissions, including Dragon Sleepers, ankle locks. Undertaker refused to tap out, and he did not. But after The Undertaker went for the last ride, Brock Lesnar interfered and ruined the whole darn thing. The match was awesome, and it was ruined as Brock Lesnar struck The Undertaker in the skull with a chair and then started smashing Kurt Angle in the back with a chair multiple times before hitting him in the face with the championship and telling the world that in his mind, he's the freaking champion. He said something explicit, but I read his lips. I can't repeat that. Nonetheless, a great match that was ruined by the Beast incarnate. But Kurt Angle said on an exclusive interview on The Undertaker's Extras, History of The Undertaker, that it was one of the greatest matches that he had with The Undertaker. At number 3, we have Kurt Angle in a losing effort against The Rock. Now, there was a match between The Rock versus Kurt Angle that is on part 1 of my review list. However, this on part 2 would be their match at No Way Out 2001 in Las Vegas. It was a classic. Both men brought out their best moves. Kurt Angle at one time was talking trash while he had the ankle lock on. Tap out! Tap out, Rocky! Tap out, you son of a biscuit! Do it now! I'll break your freaking ankle! They had to censor Kurt swearing. But in any event, Kurt Angle and The Rock put on an absolute classic at 2001's No Way Out. Even though Kurt Angle lost the championship and walked out of the arena crying, it doesn't take away from the fact that this match was awesome. It was great. If you haven't seen it, be sure to check it out. As far as the other match that is on part 1 of the review, check that out as well. Next, at number 2, we have Kurt Angle versus Chris Benoit at WrestleMania 17. Fun fact, and to my surprise, let me just say, if you haven't seen it, fun fact, The Undertaker actually put Chris Benoit as one of his top favorite small men, being 6 feet and under 6 feet tall, in one of his reviews when he talked about favorite small men to work with. Also, let me make a disclaimer that I know, first off, let me just say, the match at WrestleMania 17 was great. Kurt Angle said on a short once that his greatest matches were against Chris Benoit. Unfortunately, due to the circumstances of what happened in the summer of 2007, you won't find this on any official WWE or official professional wrestling channels. You would have to go to Daily Motion or some Chinese site called Bilibili.com to see WrestleMania 17 in full, and you can see some of those matches. Nonetheless, the match between Benoit and Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 17 was an absolute wrestling classic. These two men wrestled over the mat, getting an ovation from the crowd that likes amateur skills. We saw Kurt Angle go for the moonsault, which was halfway successful because Lord knows his moonsaults aren't that successful. But it was halfway successful, and we saw submission holds. Chris actually used Kurt Angle's ankle lock against him. Nonetheless, due to roll-ups and holding the tights, Kurt Angle would win the match. However, Kurt Angle got his karma backstage as Chris Benoit would go for the crossface. Next at number 1, Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit were great rivals, but they were also great tag team partners. And at number 1, we have Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle versus Edge and Rey Mysterio at No Mercy 2002. Now, like I said earlier, due to circumstances, you won't see this match as great as it was because of the circumstances surrounding 2007. No one will acknowledge those matches. However, from a business standpoint and from an athletic standpoint, Chris Benoit had a lot of great matches with Kurt Angle as well as alongside Kurt Angle. And this tag team match was no exception. At No Mercy, Rey Mysterio with Edge took on Kurt Angle and Benoit in the finals of the tournament, crowning the first ever SmackDown Tag Team Champions. And it was awesome. But near the end, Kurt Angle would have Edge in an ankle lock, and Edge had to go tap himself. And he tapped out to the ankle lock. And Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle will always go down in history as the first ever SmackDown Tag Team Champions. But officially, they will say that Kurt Angle, officially, they will acknowledge that Kurt Angle was the first ever SmackDown Tag Team Champions. Just won't say who's with. Nonetheless, that does it for the list for part 2 of my favorite Kurt Angle matches. Let me know in the comment section what was your favorite WWE match from the Olympic hero. And let me just say, while Kurt Angle has won a gold medal with a broken freaking neck and many great championships in WWE as well as TNA, I believe one of his greatest accomplishments was overcoming drug addiction, aka pain killing pills addiction. I think that was very awesome, and I think to put the Angle Slam on any type of addiction is awesome. So much respect to Kurt Angle for that. And with that being said, that's all the time I have for you today, and I'll be back with another review on all things wrestling. And remember, Kurt doesn't suck. Oh, it's true. It's darn true.